Takafuse Kubo is an incredibly talented player who would fit in very well at Liverpool and of course has been well documented, would be an ideal Mo Salah replacement. But what is it that suddenly sparked all this headline getting from Kubo and of course the Japanese papers and of course therefore Liverpool? Let's unpack a little bit of this. The guy who Real Madrid and Barcelona both kind of passed on, but both passed on for different reasons and both probably passed on for perfectly understandable reasons, is actually coming into pretty good form more recently and has probably warranted a €60 million price tag, which maybe slightly goes against some of what Liverpool are trying to do with their transfer policy, but could also be a steal for a player like this in the current transfer market. He's been ripping it up for Real Sociedad last season. He's registered the, I think, 5th most carries, successful carries in La Liga. He's up there with assists and non-penalty goals in the league as well. And he's a player who not only has magic feet in the first place. Do we need another Felipe Coutinho? The Japanese Coutinho would probably be a great nickname for him in the first place. The Japanese Magician would be an incredible nickname for him. But we're also looking for a player to serve as somewhat of an understudy, but also someone who can pick up the mantle when Mo Salah does ultimately leave. Liverpool are very conscious of the fact that they did build a pretty solid and strong and technically proficient squad during the end of the Jurgen Klopp reign. There was a lot of talent at the back that was coming through. There was a fantastic goalkeeper. There was also a fantastic backup goalkeeper. There's a midfield that was going through a rebuild, or was probably even more than halfway through a rebuild. An attacking line which Klopp hadn't quite found the shape for, but we knew was incredibly stacked with talent. And there are some young players coming through that Klopp hadn't quite got the best out of, but was definitely training and keeping at the very top level, such as Harvey Elliott, Fabio Carvalho, of course, loaned out, Stefan Bajcetic, who's now come back and made some really interesting appearances, etc., etc., etc. Jarell Quansah. There are many names that I could bring through. Conor Bradley. There are so many names that I could talk about. Dan's, like, do I just need to keep dropping these? And so when Liverpool go out into the transfer market, you've got to admit that it is difficult to know what they're looking for. Of course, there are some very obvious profiles. You're looking for a defensive midfielder, a central defender, and one of two sides of a wing-back, right? Or at least a full-back. But when you said Kubo, it suddenly made complete sense to me. Liverpool will have been looking at some of these more senior players and saying how much of it was the Klopp system that got the best out of you and how much of it was you as a natural player. Liverpool signed an incredibly good contract with Mo Salah because Mo Salah was and is one of the leaders in the team. He captained Liverpool in that 1-0 loss to Preston. But a lot of this is also taking assumptions from a previous era, one without Michael Edwards, one without Richard Hughes, one without Arne Slot, one where the shape and the dynamic of the team was completely different, one which, frankly, we're probably looking to move on from a little bit, so look to change some of the shape from this. And a player like Kubo fits perfectly into that. He's been at a number of brilliant academies, he's been at a number of brilliant technically proficient sides within La Liga, but also out there in Tokyo as well. And as he was signed by Real Madrid, albeit on a free transfer, and then to Real Sociedad more recently for a relatively modest price of €5.5 million, he's still a player who is very technically proficient, makes the other players around him brilliant, and serves them particularly well. Has amazing feet, is able to get away from tackles relatively easily, wins free kicks really well, especially in the opposition's half, is a player who has an amazing heat map, not only moving forward, but also going backwards, is very good at the corner flag, in that he's good at taking set pieces, or at least corner kicks, is a player who's also known for, his brilliance in terms of hookup play with other players and some of his interchange, is very good at dribbling, something Arne Slot will definitely value in some of his wingers out there, as a lot of people will be valuing. I think City are moving towards a more tricky, magical winger type model, and maybe this is the next kind of iteration of player that we need to be looking at within Europe in terms of, profiles of player. What is it that's going to stretch the game wide? What is it that's going to make some space in the middle for a Nunez or a Gakpo or a Jota or whoever it is? And how well can those people hook up with the people in the middle? City have been signing people like Oscar Bob. Manchester United have been signing people like Xerxes. Really good hookup players who make some of the players around them potentially a lot better. Kubo seems like one of those players. It's just that he didn't previously fit into some of those profiles, and frankly, I'm not sure that Real Madrid, Barcelona, or even some of the players and teams who loaned him more recently would have thought he would have fitted into their sides in the way that they wanted him to. Kubo's time as a player, Kubo's profile as a player seems to be coming. He's 23, so he's not even reached his peak yet. In fact, he's a good few years off it, and he's already really good. He's a player who obviously is incredibly technically proficient and incredibly technically talented. Someone called him the Japanese Messi just the other day. I think that's a very easy tag to attach to a lot of people. I'm not sure quite that he fits in that profile, though obviously he's slightly on the smaller side. He does play with his left foot on the inside of the right wing, so there is a lot of technical should we say, comparison there in the first place. I think he's also one of those players that a lot of people enjoy to watch because of his trickery, because of his speed, because very often you will see him outdo an opposition player. He'll also make the striker next to him better. He'll also hook up with that striker or the player immediately behind that. Classic Arne Slot play. Loves having that 10 in there. Sometimes the 2 10s just coming back and forward, depending on how the triangle of his midfield is working at that point. And also when it comes to Kubo, he's a different player to what Mo Salah is. We want to be moving on from just the same profiles of players. Salah fitted perfectly into all those Klopp squads. When we say perfectly, I think he had a lot of great goal seasons. But a lot of people always wonder, and I think a lot of people need to look at this right now, especially in the rebuilding of the squad, how much of it was Klopp's system that made these players good, and could another player slot into that profile, and how much of it was those players making this system particularly good. Salah probably is one of those players that a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B, but he was always on the higher end of being a brilliant individual player who was incredibly driven, had a great personality, has someone who in the dressing room was always very consistent, had a big ego on him that could obviously at times push the team over the edge and get them to the next level, and was someone who always wanted to win. We are looking to replace those kind of personalities in the side. In the next few years, we are looking at losing Virgil van Dijk, Robbo, potentially Trent if a new contract doesn't get signed. Salah, we've already lost the likes of Firmino, Hendo, Fabinho, real leaders within the side who made sure there was a balance in the dressing room. Doesn't mean that we need to get those exact same profiles in, but it does mean that we need to get players in who are going to be more balanced in the dressing room, going to give us those kind of qualities that we're looking for as a squad overall. Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes are especially good at looking at squad makeup, especially good at looking at the personalities they're bringing in, profiling those players, doing deep levels of research on those guys. Kubo will probably be fitting into a lot of the yes boxes for them, but at the same time, is it immediately a priority? Is this summer a time to spend 60 million on one of those players and potentially say goodbye to one of Liverpool's wingers? Be that Luis Diaz, be that probably Mo Salah if that is the case. Or is it that Liverpool are also looking at, right, we have to plan for the future at this point. When Mo Salah goes, especially if he's on a free, a very low amount of money to a country like Saudi, then we don't want to get caught with our pants down. We don't want to be in a position where people go, I know you need a right winger, I know someone who needs what you need to fit into that kind of position. We're going to charge you another 20 million on top of that because we know you're desperate for that position. Speaking of which players also play alongside him very well? Szoboszlai, obviously a player I think we're looking to see whether he plays as a 10 individually or as a double 10. So there's like, is he closer out on the right on the overlap? Is he going to fit in with someone like Trent or Connor Bradley? What's the hookup play going to be like with them? Could someone like Kubo be very good for dropping in and kind of profiling and dropping back a little bit, and then Trent overlapping on that? Could Kubo be someone who's great at picking up from deep, which he definitely is, and driving forward, which he definitely is? And also, can he cope well with the rigours of the Premier League? La Liga is a much less intense physically league. Are Liverpool going to bring him in and look to work him up under someone like Mo Salah, and are they going to look to give him a few game minutes and then keep Mo Salah as the A side and him as the B side? Would he make a great replacement sub? Would he make someone good in terms of bringing a player and a profile in who's going to come in and make the players around him better, an impact sub late on who can come in there with assists, who can come in there with goals, who can pop up and be a very different presence? I see his electricity in the box, I see his movement in the box. He loves to play off a striker, he loves to play behind, but also then play that striker in. Obviously that's pretty generic wing play for a player, but it's pretty interesting to see the two different profiles there. And with Salah, the way that he's hooked up more with Nunez more recently, are we looking for someone who's more capable of that? That seems to be a profile that's becoming much more popular in wingers out there. So I'm interested to know what you guys think. I think Liverpool's transfer policy is going to be one that's going to be a little bit more conservative, a little bit more careful, a little bit more considered, especially considering the good makeup of the squad at the moment. People panicking about Trent, people panicking about Salah, people panicking about Van Dijk. Cool it for a minute. Edwards and Hughes will have a lot of targets. They will have a lot of people they'll be looking at. They'll also have a lot of internal things they want to get right in terms of Trent, Virgil van Dijk, and of course Mo Salah. But there will also be policies and ideas that they will bring in, which is like, do we really want to keep Salah? Do we really want to keep Van Dijk? Do we really want to keep Trent? Or are we looking to cash in? I was having this conversation the other day with another guy where it was like, Trent is an incredible right back, an incredible midfielder, and obviously want as many of those in the squad as possible. But if Liverpool don't feel he fits the profile of what they're looking for, and sometimes you have to make more space for these kind of guys, sometimes you have to move things around just to accommodate them, is that really what Slot wants to be doing? Or was that something Klopp was willing to do and did to accommodate this incredible, audacious talent? Or is it that you would move on from a Salah, a Van Dijk, or say, a Trent, because you think, hey, it's time to change the profile in the team. It's not a personal thing. It's not, oh, we don't want a Scouser in the size. None of these kind of stupid narratives that people are bringing in, but it is, what is it that Liverpool are trying to achieve with the shape of this team? And we haven't actually seen that yet. We haven't seen the full squad together. We haven't seen the style of play. We haven't seen who gels with Slot and those new positions particularly well. And we're about to see that in their new pre-season. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the channel in the coming days. There's a Discord and a Patreon down there if you want to support some of the work we're doing. Let me know where you think Kubo fits in. I think it's alongside a Slobberslai or an Elliott, though both those guys profile very well out on the right. Though Elliott, I don't think is so much of a winger considering his profile. I think he's a slightly deeper player, more of a 10, more of a 8/10, but more of a 10. What would happen with Trent? What would happen with Bradley? What would happen with all these different guys? And do you think Kubo should be a priority ahead of a midfielder or a central defender or even a wing back? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys right here on Laurence McKenna on LFC channel very soon. Much love.